As you can see, the next topic is saving the earth starts with you. There's no question, it is such a true statement. And Aliya Dharamshi is going to present to us her views, her perspective on this very, very important topic. Aliya, as you know, she is a graduate from the University of Toronto, registered dental hygienist, and as she said, she has been influenced by her mother, I'm sure her parent, her dad as well, on this how to behave and how to do things in an environmentally friendly way.
When I was about 15 years old, my mom started bringing her own cup and plate to the mosque every time food was going to be served. This was before going green was popular. Much to my teenage dismay, she would often bring a plate for me too, and I would be so embarrassed to see my mom pull a plate out of her purse. At the time, I didn't understand why one cup or one plate made any difference. What's the big deal, I would say, but because of her silent fierceness, I almost always conceded. Fast forward 20 years, and I now, through research and education, am doing the same thing to my daughter, although she's not old enough to roll her eyes at me yet. To put it simply, this earth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with has a finite amount of space. It was not created to be able to sustain the massive amounts of waste we are now creating as families, societies, and members of this global village. As Edward Bertinsky writes, quote, "We have always taken from nature. This is normal, part of the condition, and indeed a fact of life. What is different today is the speed and scale of human taking, and that the earth has never experienced this kind of cumulative impact." End quote. Climate scientists and researchers now show us that we are at the tipping point, and there is a timer on how much we need to change our habits and how fast before the damage is irreversible. Scientists say it's about 12 years. We have about 12 years to change our act completely. I'm not here to bring a dark cloud to this beautiful space. I'm here to sound the alarms so that we can start taking this issue as seriously as it needs to be taken. We are in a climate crisis. So here's a basic summary of what the climate crisis is. There are naturally occurring gases in the Earth's atmosphere, carbon dioxide and methane. In and of themselves, these gases are not bad. In fact, we need them in limited quantities to keep the Earth's atmosphere at just the right temperature. These gases allow the sun's rays to pass through and warm the Earth and trap the heat from escaping back into the atmosphere, in which case the Earth would be too cold to inhabit. But if we produce an excess amount of these gases, as we have, the temperature rises, as it has. The more carbon pollution floating in the air, the more these gases trap the sun's energy as heat, and everything gets hotter. That's what we keep referring to as global warming. For nearly 1 million years, the carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere stayed at a very natural bandwidth. But at the time of the Industrial Revolution, humans started burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas at increasingly large rates. So, with all this extra greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, the world has gotten approximately 1 degree Celsius warmer since the year 1880. So, I can hear you, 1 degree Celsius doesn't sound like a big deal, right? Yeah. Okay. 1 degree Celsius of warmth is enough to cause corals in the ocean to die. Scientists describe coral reefs as rainforests of the sea. They are a habitat for about 1/4 of all marine species, including fish, turtles, and algae. If anyone has seen pictures of the Great Barrier Reef in Australia today, it's really quite devastating. A Toronto Star article from 2017 reported that the Australian Museum has found that Almost half of the coral has died since 1980. Half. What was once a canvas of color and beauty and vibrancy now has large patches of white or brown bleached or dying coral. When coral dies because of that 1 degree of warmth, those marine life lose their habitat and in turn causes a ripple effect. We have thrown the natural order off its course because of our need for excess. In addition, with this warmth, we start to see glaciers and ice caps melting, which lead to sea levels rise. When sea levels rise, we either see low-lying islands actually just get totally covered as if they were never there in the first place, or we start to see this water creep closer to populated areas like New York, Melbourne, Miami, in the news today, Ottawa, right? And so, sorry, 1 second. And so, what does this all mean, and how does it affect our daily life? I have too many cards, that's the problem. Okay, so how does this affect our daily lives? More than half of the greenhouse gases that are emitted come from factories and power plants. So there is a cost to convenience, like single-use plastics. I'm gonna have to use these, I'm blanking. Okay, so governments and industry play a big role, for sure. But industry will produce what sells. So let's take a common everyday example. Plastic water bottles. They may seem harmless, and I agree, cases come very cheap. But consider this. Canadians buy approximately 2.4 billion liters of bottled water per year, or 68 liters per person. Now, although there are regulations in Ontario regarding how much water can be extracted in terms of amounts and costs, big corporations come into our backyard, set up camp, extract our water to the tune of 7.6 million liters per day. That's the current maximum amount allowable. And they sell it back to us in plastic bottles. Not to mention the energy that was needed and the greenhouse gases that were expelled to make those water bottles in the first place that will most likely end up where? In our parks, our waterways, or our landfills. So what goes into making each of these products? And what happens to them after we're done with them? So what is actually stopping us from using reusable water bottles? Why are plastic water bottles still so pervasive? This is an example of a single-use plastic that's not so convenient if you consider its all-around impact, okay? This is how I like to think about it. Everything in this world has a life cycle. Cells, plants, animals, humans, living things. But I invite you to consider that non-living things have a life cycle too. Plastic water bottles, a styrofoam cup, that plastic spoon you used at lunch yesterday. What went into manufacturing each one of those things, and what happens to it after we're done with it? From the time we put something into the garbage bin, it sort of follows this out of sight, out of mind philosophy. We put something in the garbage, our garbage gets picked up once a week, or depending on your municipality, maybe once every 2 weeks. And then it's taken somewhere, to a far, far away place where we don't really see where it goes. Yeah, where it's far, far away, right? But what went into making that product, right? And where does it go after that? And I invite you to consider that Each of these things have a life cycle, and I hope that this staggering fact puts things in perspective. One styrofoam cup takes approximately 500 or more years to decompose in some form, okay? And the science differs on this, but we're assuming that that cup is in a landfill, devoid of air and devoid of sunlight. So that means that the cup of chai you use today, or the month of Ramadan is coming up, that cup that you use for your chai at the end of a fast, much needed, will still be around somewhere on this earth in your lifetime, your child's lifetime, their child's lifetime, their grandchild's lifetime, their great-grandchild's lifetime. That's 10 or more generations that that cup will be there in some form or another, whether we see it again or not. So governments have been slow to take up different sources of energy, like clean sources. But the good news is that young people are now leading the pack. Greta Thunberg is a 16-year-old Swedish climate activist who is nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Last year in August of 2018, she started something called School Strikes for the Climate, where she sat outside the Swedish parliament to demand action. Her demands were that the Swedish government reduce their carbon emissions in accordance with the Paris Agreement, and she sat outside the parliament during school hours with a sign that said School Strike for the Climate. After their general elections, she continued sitting outside the Swedish parliament only on Fridays, gaining worldwide attention. And really, she inspired other students across the globe to hold their own school strikes. As of December 2018, more than 20,000 students in over 270 cities across the globe had held their own school strikes. In her very powerful and moving TEDx Stockholm talk, she says, and I quote, "What we do or don't do right now will affect the lives of my children and my grandchildren. What we do or don't do right now, me and my generation can't undo in the future. Some people say that I should be in school instead. Some people say that I should study to become a climate activist so that I can solve the climate crisis. But the climate crisis has already been solved. We already have all the facts and solutions. All we have to do is wake up and change." Some people say Sweden is just a small country and it doesn't matter what we do. But I think that if a few students can get headlines all over the world just by not coming to school for a few days, imagine what we could all do if we wanted to. And so, where do we go from here? As Greta says, we've had 20 years of positive pep talking and it doesn't work, end quote. So, I'm here to give you 5 concrete steps that you can take as you leave here today, that you can commit to help fight the climate crisis from yourselves and from your homes. Number 1, education. Commit to educating yourself. The more you know, the more you can affect change and inspire those around you. For those of you who really don't know where to even begin, some great resources are the David Suzuki Foundation and climatereality.org. At the very, very, very least, please try and learn your municipality's rules for garbage recycling and compost. Learn what goes in which bin. And if you're not sure, just ask. The municipalities are really trying to do their best with what they have. Number 2, swap disposable for reusable. So, reusable containers for your leftover food at home instead of containers with plastic wrap on top. Reusable water bottles, stainless steel straws instead of plastic straws. If you keep them in your car and your purse, you'll be reminding yourself to say, no straw please, and you'll use the ones that you already have. Reusable shopping bags, reusable produce bags. When you go to the grocery store, you'll use something for about maybe 5 minutes, and then it will go in the garbage. So reusable produce bags actually just go in the washing machine, and they're so easy to use. And when we talk about reusable water bottles, I've heard from people that say, Well, what happens if I run out of water on the road? Then I'll have to buy a bottle anyways, haha, in your face. Well, there's an app for that. It's called TAP, T-A-P. And if you download it, it actually shows you all the free water refill stations that are around you, anywhere you are in the city. So, very helpful. Number 3, be mindful about the amount of garbage you are creating. Can something be reused? Can it be repaired? Can you buy something secondhand? Can something be repurposed? This artwork is just an amazing, amazing play on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if anyone is familiar with that, where it shows you, most importantly, use what you have. And if you can't, borrow something. If you can't do that, swap it with somebody. If you absolutely can't do that, go to a thrift store. Use what's already in circulation. After that, make it yourself. And the absolute last case scenario is to buy something from Amazon, and that's bad of me because my husband works for Amazon. Yeah. Number 4, contact your members of parliament. That's what they're there for, and put pressure on our government to make changes to switch to cleaner, renewable sources of energy, like solar and wind. And number 5, make it a family affair. Learn together, grow together, involve your children and your grandchildren, and I promise you, they will lead the way if they're given the opportunity. Thank you.